I'm Jay Robinson.
And I'm Jesse Wood. And on this episode, we continue part 2 with social media influencer, Son of God, Jay Robinson. We talk about prophetic signs and words, starting a business failing, God getting with him, and then seeing rapid, massive success with just one mindset shift you're not going to want to miss in this episode. If you're hungry to walk in your God-given purpose, but the process feels slower or more hidden than you expected, you're not alone. This is the Jesse Wood Show, where we give voice to the real process behind God-designed purpose. I created this space for faith-driven builders like you to help you recognize the importance of the season that God has you in and what he's doing in you during it, because what he builds in you matters just as much as what he builds through you. I'm Jesse Wood. Welcome to the podcast, and let's build together. Jay Robinson, so glad to have you back. Our last conversation was so incredible. I can't wait to hear the next bit of the story of your journey that God brought you through. If you're listening to this episode, and you haven't listened to the previous episode, the first half of the interview with Jay Robinson, pause right now. Go back, listen to it, get the setup. It's so good. Just the transition, the journey you went through, and you got to a point where finally you broke, had this supernatural encounter with God, shifted your life back around, and then you started on what you last said was your wilderness season. So pick us up from there for people that are watching, going through a process, feeling like they're in a wilderness. Maybe they've quit everything, whatever else has happened to them, like how you burned your FedEx jacket, just went for it. Now they're in a season, maybe it feels like the desert. Maybe nothing's working. Maybe everything's falling apart. I don't know. Pick us up from there in your story.
Yeah, man. So that transition after leaving the music industry was kind of crazy for me because I was in a position where I was a full-time entrepreneur, right? I'm living the dream. I'm making money in my sleep. I'm traveling. I'm, living life on my own terms, right? And when I finally submitted that to God and I walked away from it, I was like, God, I'm going to follow you, whatever you want me to do, however that looks like. And so not too long after 2020, my wife and I, we actually got married February of 2021, the day before Valentine's
Congratulations.
Day. I appreciate that. And so the reality set in. I was like, whoa, like I don't have money coming in. Like I have to take care of a family now. I got to go get a job. Like I didn't even know what that word was for the last year. And so I was like, bro, I got to go get a job. And so I literally was just grabbing the first thing that came across my plate. I think it was the YMCA. Like, bro, you're making like $7 an hour. I was like, bro, I got to get some type of money coming in. So soon after that, FedEx comes along and I was like, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to stay at FedEx for 1 year and I'm going to just stabilize, kind of get my life together, support this new family. And then I'm getting right back out into the marketplace because I always had the entrepreneurial bug. And even when I was doing music, I didn't consider it business. I just considered it passion. And I was like, oh, I can get paid for what I love to do. But I never treated it like, oh, this is a business, right? But I was always, business savvy. And I liked the idea of being an entrepreneur. And so I was like, I know I need to go figure something out. And this is really where my wilderness journey began because, again, this is where so many faith-based creatives and entrepreneurs find themselves is they feel like the first step is what they need to do, right? So I leave the music industry and I'm like, I need to go find something to do. I need to go find a side hustle. I need to go find ways to make money outside of this job because I can't stay here. This isn't for me. I'm not cut out for this. So immediately I'm looking for things to do. And although FedEx was a job that kept me stable, I knew that it was not aligned with my purpose. But what ended up happening was I got really comfortable with the manna because, I'm like, I get a check every single week. My job is predictable. I know what to expect. Like, it's not too crazy. I really don't have to work with a whole lot of people either. I'm just in my truck, kind of in my own lane. And so what was supposed to only be 1 year turned into 3 years really quickly. And then I feel like at that third year, that's when I really got a kick in the butt and God was like, hey, I didn't intend to leave you here. Like this was literally just supposed to provide for you for a season. You need to, start this process of becoming. But again, because I didn't understand the process, I was like, oh, I need to find something to do. So again, this sent me on a rabbit chase of all these different side hustles, looking for something to do, trying to figure out what it was that God actually wanted me to do outside of music, because for so long that was me, that was my identity. So now it's like, okay, God, what do you want me to do, or what do I even have to bring? I felt like I was that person that put all their eggs in one basket with music. So when I walked away, I like, for the first time in my life, I was lost. I was like, bro, I don't even know what skill I have to offer outside of music. Like, I didn't go to school. Like, and at this point, now the regret is kind of starting to sink in. I'm like, dang, all my friends went to school. They're like, in their second, third year in their degree. Like, they're gonna be, situated. And here I am starting over from scratch. And it just sent me on this journey, right? And so fast forward to 2022, God tells my wife and I to start a business. And we know nothing about this business he's telling us to start. But this was right around the time Balenciaga was having this scandal, right? They had this campaign that was geared towards children. And it was just very demonic, very dark, very demonic. And I remember distinctly hearing God's voice, and he was like, I want my name to be glorified in this industry. So he led me and my wife to start a clothing brand. My wife and I have always been into fashion, clothes, sneakers, and stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. I like clothes and fashion, but I don't know anything about, the business side of things. So that sends me on a year-long journey of becoming a student, trying to figure out the business side of things, how to actually start a business, start a brand, start a company. And I was just in Hard Knocks University for a whole year, just learning and fumbling and getting scammed left and right, trying to find designers and people to collaborate with and people who I could trust, and like losing money and just getting extremely frustrated. But that was the process of development that I had to go through in order for me to be prepared to carry the assignment that God would have for me today. And I didn't understand it at that time. I was just like, you know what? I'm just being obedient to God. I'm trusting him, right? So 2020, I get that vision to build a business. At fast forward to 2023, my church has this conference every year, and we have people that travel from all over the world, prophets and pastors and teachers and preachers and stuff. So I was at this conference. This is end of 2023, and God had already been kind of revealing to me that he was teeing me up to get ready to leave my job, but he didn't give me that green light yet. So I was like, okay. So I go to this conference. I really was not expecting anything like spectacular to happen for myself personally, but I end up getting called out like the first or the second night of the conference. And I get called on stage, and I start getting prophesied over. There's like 5 or 6 different guys that come up, prophets from all over the world, that literally start prophesying over me, speaking the word of the Lord over my life. And the summary of those prophetic words was, God is about to elevate you. God is about to send you out into the marketplace. God is about to start blessing the work of your hands. You are going to start discipling men in your generation. God is going to give you a voice that is going to reach people. You're going to spread the name and the fame of God far and wide. And it was just like, I felt like I was just getting gassed up. I was like, yo, what is going on right now?
Let's
But then I
go.
was getting excited because I was like, yo, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You told me to start a business at 2020. And so now you're prophesying all this great stuff over me. So I'm like, oh, the business is about to take off. So now I'm excited. I'm like, all right, cool. So now my faith level to quit my job was like high. I was like, dude, I can leave today if you want me to. So I get that prophetic word. That was literally like October of 2023. September, God tells me to quit FedEx. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm all in. I tell my wife, she's like, yeah, I don't know about that. Like we're literally in the process of buying our first home. At that time, we were trying to have our first child. I had just bought a new car. And so she was just, the voice of reason in that season. And she was just like, yeah, I don't know if this is like really, are you sure you're hearing God? And I was like, let me go back. I go back, I pray about it some more. And I'm like, babe, this is God. He's telling me to do this. Right. And there was just so many signs of confirmation that was leading up to that decision. So I finally quit my job, right? Start the new year fresh. This is 2024 now. And I'm not working. And now my main motivation is, well, God, you prophesied this thing over me, and I have to, I have to make sure that, I'm doing my part so that you can do what you said you're going to do, right? And so what that ended up turning into was me reading into this prophetic word a little too much. I had my own motivations for this prophetic word. I had my own idea of what that was supposed to materialize into and how that was supposed to look. And the thing that I was after was completely different from what God was after in that season. And so
Wow.
what ended up happening was my motivations changed from, okay, God, I'm being obedient to carry out this vision that you've given me to start this business to, I got to make money. Like this thing has to make money. I don't have a job no more. We're trying to start a, business. We're about to buy a house, like all this financial pressure. And so what happens is I lost the plot. I lost sight of the vision of what God was truly trying to build and develop inside of me. And so that took me out of a place of being connected in his presence into being in a place of pressure. And so when you're in pressure, you feel like you have to perform. And so I'm doing all of these things, I'm staying busy. And when I finally get around to launching the business, it flops. Like
Man.
hard, hard flop. Like I was like, okay, maybe my wife was right. Maybe I didn't hear God. Like, maybe this is not what I was supposed to do. Like, nothing added up. It didn't sound or look anything like this grand prophetic word that I just got over my life. So I was like, I'm confused. So the business flops. And that immediately sends me into like desperation mode where I'm like, all right, God, you got to show up and tell me something because now I'm just out here stranded in the wood and there's no water, no manna. Right. And so what God was after in that season was so much deeper. God was after my dependence. God was after my need to be in control and to know what the next step was and what his grand plan was. God was after that. I tell people now that process felt like Abraham leading his son up on the mountain, being obedient to the voice of God, but carrying the thing that he prayed and asked God for up to an altar to sacrifice it. And when we read that story, it's like, man, he had great, amazing faith. But I'm like, dude, put yourself in his shoes. Like, I'm sure there was some type of internal conflict
Yeah.
of him battling. Like, dude, I prayed and I waited for over 20 years for this promise to show up, and now you want me to give it back to you and sacrifice it, right? But God was never interested in killing Isaac, right? God was never interested in taking the promise from him. But I believe that it was Abraham's need to be in control and to understand everything. That's what had to die on the altar. Right. And so that was like that journey for me going through that season. And so fast forward, this is like 6 months now, we're out of work. And then God tells me something unthinkable. He's like, hey, I want you to go back to the place I told you to quit. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. Like that was the biggest slice of humble pie I had to eat because, when I left that time, I was like, oh, bro, I'm never working for anybody else again. Like I'm done. I'm out of here. Like God just gave me this prophetic word. I'm starting a business. And I was telling all my friends and family everything. I'm like, man, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what God said. And like, it just flopped. And so it was extremely humbling, low key embarrassing, but God was after developing my character, right? This was my hero journey, right? Or my hero arc. God was developing my character and he was preparing me for the assignment that he had for me. And so when I went back to my job, it was extremely frustrating and disappointing because I kind of felt like, dang, well, maybe I messed up, maybe I did something wrong. And it just took me a while to realize that God was just developing me. He was preparing me, right? But that season, that was the most intentional I've ever been about like prayer and fasting. And God really taught me and my wife how to depend on him, right? How to truly depend on him. When we have $0 coming in your bank account, like I mean, you really don't have any more options, but like he really taught us how to depend on him and how to trust in him. And our relationship as a couple grew so much deeper. Our relationship with God during that season grew so much deeper. Like I had so many rich moments of prayer and fasting and just connecting with the Lord. And it really was a test. God was really testing to see, hey, if I tell you to come up this mountain, are you going to bring the promise with you? Are you actually going to put it on the altar? Right? Like it was such a clear mirror of that story of Abraham in the Bible for me. And so he was really just after my faith and he was really testing me. So I go back to FedEx and I'm like, okay, I'll stay here as long as you want me to. And through that process, God just continued working on my character and developing me and preparing me. And so then finally, the end of 2024, when we found out that our son was on the way, that's when God really began to position me for the assignment. And so I knew that some things were just working and moving. And I was like, okay, God, like I need to get in place. And so went through that whole phase of God preparing me. And when 2025 came around, I was like, this is the year where I'm going to be intentional. And this is the year where I'm not going to, keep repeating these cycles of starting and stopping. Because at this point, I kind of understood like what God was setting me up for. I still didn't know the fullness of it, but I was like, okay, he's setting me up for some type of platform to have some type of influence in the marketplace or somewhere. So I know I need to prepare myself to be on some type of digital channel, right? And so the beginning of 2025, I just made it my business to be intentional about creating content. Even though it wasn't my first rodeo, it was my first time doing like short form content and stuff. And so when I started out, again, I went through this phase where I was like, all right, I'm feeling the pressure of this looming fatherhood that is, around the corner. So I'm like, dude, it would be really nice to have a little nest egg, before this little one shows up. So I'm creating the content, but again, my motivations at that time was like I really want to like provide and have my wife come home and make sure I'm being this provider. But what God was after was, hey, I'm preparing you and teaching you how to be a servant. Right. I'm preparing you to not put your own ambitions above the needs of others. Right. This is what it says in Philippians, like do nothing out of selfish ambition, but in everything, put your neighbor's needs above your own. Right. And so God was trying to teach me what it means to actually be a servant. And then God was also teaching me how your assignment works, right? Your assignment, the gifts that God gives you, the skills that God gives you, the deposits that God puts inside of you, even though he's giving it to you, is not for you. It is to serve the people that are attached to your assignment. And so as I'm like just understanding more and more like what he's preparing and developing inside of me, I start to align and I start to yield and I start to be like, okay, God, I see in this area where I'm being a little bit selfish, or this is a selfish ambition, and he's changing my desires and he's changing my motivations. And finally, it gets to a place where I find myself praying a prayer that Solomon prayed. And I was like, you know what, God? I don't need the money. I don't need the influence. I don't need the clout. I don't need all of that stuff. Just give me the wisdom to serve these people that you're bringing me, and help me to be a good servant, right? And it's like when I truly had that heart posture and I asked God for wisdom and I asked God to give me the heart of a servant and to give me the skill, because wisdom in Hebrew actually means skill, right? And so when I made that prayer, that's when everything changed. And when I started showing up online, the growth is literally supernatural. Like
Wow.
I started being intentional about making content in May because I went through this little phase where I kind of ghosted my accounts for 3 months. I was just in my head overthinking and stuff like that. But I finally showed back up and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna show up every day. I'm gonna be serious. I'm gonna be committed to this and I'm gonna show up to serve. So from the end of May 22nd to July 22nd, I just posted every single day. It's like 2 or 3 times a day, right? And I didn't grow much during that period. Like I think I started out at about 50 followers. When I ended, I was at about 150 followers. Well, right around my 100-day mark, I shot up from 150 followers to 2,500 followers. And then not too long after that, I went from 2,500 followers to 100,000 followers in 4 months because of that one perspective change, because of that one heart posture change, because my desires and my motivation finally aligned with God's order. And it's so powerful, like what happens when you truly come in alignment and you start to walk in the order that God created for your life. For like there is an order to prosperity, right? Prosperity is is cemented inside of your assignment. Why? Because prosperity is an attribute of God. So God is never going to give you an assignment for you to fail in it, right? God is not setting you up for failure. He's already created it and established it from the beginning for you to have prosperity in it. And when I say prosperity, I'm not just talking about money and finances, right?
Right.
The abundance, right? Abundance and wealth, right? This is instituted by God. These are attributes of God, right? And so when I started to understand that, everything just started to grow exponentially so fast. And so I look back on that time of my life and I'm like, man, it was rough back then because I didn't understand it. But if I didn't go through that season, and if I didn't allow God to teach me how to trust him and to teach me how to seek his face and to teach me how to be dependent on him and to allow my faith to be stretched, and if I didn't pass that test in that season, I wouldn't be walking in the season that I'm in right now. And
Yeah.
those prophetic words that I got from 2023, I'm literally walking in the fullness of those words now.
It's so good. There's so much of God's protection in that because of how much he loves you. And it's so often, I mean, I'm guilty of getting a prophetic word and like if this happened tomorrow, it'd be amazing, but it also would have shortcutted the journey that I needed. I mean, I released the Purpose Driven Business Builder Blueprint at the end of December 2025, and I received a prophetic word 7.5 years before that that I should be writing a book. And before I put pen to paper, I had to ask God, I had to go, hey, is this something I'm supposed to act on right now? Because it'd be really nice to just write a book and sell a
Yeah,
million bajillion copies and not feel poor and scared. But he was like, no, you haven't yet lived what
yeah.
you're going to write about. You haven't gone
Wow.
through the journey yet. And I love what you said about alignment. And in my previous jobs punching the clock. I actually ran an auto shop. I've been through automotive school. I can build an engine. I
Yeah,
got lots of random skills. But one of the big things about cars that's important is having the right alignment. And if you don't have alignment, if you're not moving, you won't know.
yeah,
But the moment the car starts moving down the road, if the and when I talk about alignment, you could put a car on an alignment machine and you're getting it right. We're looking at the 10th of a degree,
yeah,
like a 10th of one
yeah,
degree, just
yeah,
slightly off. But
yeah,
even just slightly off, it'll wear your tires much faster. It'll wear the
yeah,
car out much more. You pay a higher toll, a higher cost. And if it's out too much, I mean, you get going down the road. Like if you got if one of the tires is out of balance, it
yeah,
starts getting crazy, terrible, uncomfortable. The faster you get going. So because God loves you so much, he's like, all right, Jay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get you now. You're like, you're so close but I just need one before I send you flying down your purpose path. I need to get you just aligned just right. And when you were talking about getting that final like click of like, all right, God, I'm just here to serve people. You're a builder. I'm a builder. God's a builder. How do I know? Well, he said Jesus is the cornerstone. And the cornerstone is the thing that establishes the alignment for everything else that's going to be built on top of it. And
yes,
if we got to come alongside Jesus, the cornerstone, and God wants to build on you, if he wants to build on me, if he wants to build on you, viewer, listener, right now, you can't just be like mostly touching the cornerstone. You can't be just like, hey, we're like corner to corner. You got to be so squared up and God's like, we're so close. We're just gonna, all right, now we're locked in.
yeah,
That's something I can build on.
yes,
And then
sir.
boom, now it's stacking up, and it's crazy how that's going.
Yeah.
How is it? How is your relationship with your wife now, like going through those seasons? I know for me, when I began my journey, I was actually divorced, so I had this weird random grace season to just hit a giant reset button. I just had to believe God for my daughter. I'm like, I could sleep in a ditch. I'll be fine. I just had to believe God for my daughter. He came through, of course, as he always does. But how is that journey, going through that journey with a spouse? Uh,
Yeah.
how did that change you guys? How did it mold you? What do you see the fruit has come out of that in the last couple minutes that we have here?
Yeah, I mean, at first, it was extremely challenging for my wife because that's just not something that she was used to, living in. You know what I mean? So for her, it was different. And just a little bit about like our testimony, and like how we met. So funny story. I actually used to be an Uber driver, and we met through Uber. It was a very funny story. I'll have to, tell you at some point. But when we met, she had a hunger and desire for God, and I was kind of like one of the catalysts that really like brought her in and like introduced her into like a full experience of God. And so in a lot of ways, I've kind of been the one to like open the door for her to like this new level or this new experience in God. And so even going through that journey, I kicked that door wide open and she was like, "Yeah, what is this?" And I was just like, "Hey." I was like, "Do you love me? Do you trust God? All right, well, he's leading me, so we'll be all right," you know? And, dude, it was just real though. Like when we were going through that season, there was literally every night I would have to go and comfort her and console her because she was just like, "Where is the money coming from?" And I was like, I'm asking God the same questions. I don't know, but I know that God is good." And I was like, "If he wants us to have this house, he's not gonna let us lose it." And we didn't lose our house. We didn't lose anything. Like God provided for us. And so I think that really solidified her faith to be able to say, "You know what, God, I don't have to have all the answers and know everything, but I know that you're good. And I know that you're not gonna, forsake us. And so I trust you."
That's awesome. This has been so incredible. I've loved been getting to know you. I love that the viewers out there have been getting to know you. Incredible man of God, building it. I know God's going to use you to help build other people. I'm so glad that we're in this journey alone. Any final words for the people, for the other builders out there?
Yeah, I mean, I love that example you use of Christ being the cornerstone, right? As long as you are building whatever it is you're building, right? If you are building it on that foundation, when you go through testing and when you go through the fire, whatever it is that you're building is going to remain. There's a verse in the Bible, and I can't think of the exact reference right now, but it talks about when you build on that foundation, like your treasure is going to remain. Like it is not going to be burned up, right? And so that is the assurance that you have. So don't listen to culture and society and don't get your identity and your tips and strategies from them. Like you get the blueprint in the presence of God. And as long as you remain connected to the source and abide in him, you will bear much fruit. That is the blueprint. That's the blueprint.
It's so good. So for the builders out there praying for fruit, get connected. What Jay is saying, stay abiding. Thank you so much, Jay. You guys have been tuning into the Jesse Wood Show with Jay Robinson, yours truly, Jesse Wood. Let's build together.